Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Jeremy Thomas. I'm one of the sales account managers here in the Verisk UK Land and Buildings team.
And I'm Tom Timms. I'm the sales director here.
And today we're going to take you through the various products that are available on the Digimap service. And over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll run through a summary of the products, their features, and a couple of use cases as well. But our main focus will be how you can make use of the data in your project.
Okay, but just to start off, a little bit about Verisk. So who are Verisk? We're one of the world's leading insurance service companies. So we're not an insurance company itself, but we provide services to insurers. So, for example, we have colleagues who predict hurricane and other extreme events around the world. So they have models to predict extreme events, but they take it further and then calculate the losses that an insurer would face if one of those events takes place. We have others who can tell, for example, how much it might cost if you have a flood or leaky tap or some burst pipe in your house. And they can also manage the whole service of refurbishment and replacement and whatever. So we're a large company on NASDAQ, and we have a global presence. And you can see there on the right of the screen our values. And these are important to us and the company. So learning, results driven, and also caring. And I would say for an American company, Verisk is a very caring organization to work for, and we're consistently voted a good place to work in all of the countries that we operate in. So Jeremy and I are part of a team that was a company that was originally called the Geoinformation Group, a Cambridge-based company who started off selling aerial photography, but then products derived from aerial imagery, so geospatial data derived from aerial imagery. And we were acquired by Verisk in 2016, largely because of the property data that we're going to be talking about in a minute. So who are our customers? So you can see a wide range of organizations on the screen. Obviously insurers, so like Aviva and Direct Line, they use our data to assess risk, look at underwriting risk, but also perhaps they can ask you fewer questions if you're trying to get home insurance. Or the other thing is maybe check the answers you give if you're asking for home insurance. So there's insurers, there are utilities, so people like Thames Water and other utilities use our data to understand how old assets might be, but also the risk of flooding and things like that. We also supply data to companies like Savills and other property and consultancies who use the data to look for particular types of land or do spatial searches on land use or land suitability, and Ordnance Survey as well. So we'll talk more about Ordnance Survey a bit later. So we have three products on Digimap available to you, and we're going to talk you through those now. So the first is a product called UK Land, which is a small-scale land use database covering the whole of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So it's coverage of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It's very good for complete coverage of all those areas, and it is difficult sometimes to get consistent coverage across the whole of the UK. So we have a consistent product. There are roughly 27 classes of land use in UK land. Simply, you can divide them into natural, so things like agricultural land, different types of woodland, water, and then urban, and different urban classifications, so industrial, suburban, commercial. And if you look at the screen, this is actually Reading on the screen, and you can kind of see that's the town centre, so the orange there would be the urban centre or something like that. And then you've got different kind of tones of yellow, browny colours. They're different densities of suburban, effectively. And then you can pick out areas of obviously green, but then industrial and business areas as well. So the uses of this include site search and assessment. So, if you're looking for perhaps open areas to develop near motorway junctions or something, you could use this in conjunction with other data. You could look for old mines or quarries for waste disposal sites, for example. Comparing different areas, if you wanted to compare one region with another for the proportion of woodland or suburban or whatever. And also the utilities use it to plan rollout of things like telecom schemes and things like that. We had someone actually analyse, look at risks around airports, and they found that around Heathrow, there's a surprisingly large amount of water around Heathrow. So in the event of an accident, you need to plan that a plane could come down in water, despite Heathrow not actually being on the coast. So just one of the examples of how UK land is used. UK Map is a really detailed product of the Greater London area. So, but the thing we should point out is it is in Digimap and it's available. It's a very rich product, but we're not maintaining it anymore. So there haven't been any updates to UK Map for a year or two. Nevertheless, as I say, it's a very rich product, and it's Greater London to the M25. So everything within the M25, and it has, as you can see on the screen, topography. So you can see road, buildings, and road markings as well. Things like speed humps are in the database. And it has an incredibly rich land use. So UK Land had 20 odd classes. UK Map has 200 classes. So incredibly rich and detailed land use, and also land cover. So you can find out, for example, paved areas within retail parks, things like that. You could pull out of UK Map. And there is also a retail classification. And I used to joke when I was presenting about UK Map that we can look for butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, like the old nursery rhyme. But actually, there aren't any candlestick makers in London anymore. There might have been one day, but there aren't. So that's UK Map. And then I'm going to pass on to Jeremy to talk. Oh, sorry, it's used for typically planning and site assessment, transport planning. So Transport for London, for example, classified all the roads in London according to the kinds of land use in each street, and for incident response. So it was used to help social distancing during COVID. So we measured pavement widths using UK Map. And also in the riots many years ago, the police used it to identify where people lived above shops. So when there was people were torching shops, our data was able to pull out where there might be residential above retail premises. So yeah, so that's UK Map, a really detailed product, but as I say, it's not maintained. But if you're doing a research on London, it's probably a very useful resource. So now, yeah, pass on to Jeremy.
Thanks, Tom. So the third product that we have on the Digimap portal is UK Buildings. So this is a national property database that covers England, Scotland, and Wales. And if you want to know something about the character of the building, be it residential or commercial, this is your best starting point. So there's now currently 46 property attributes available against each premise in UK Buildings. And this image on the right is quite interesting, although it just looks like a standard sort of density map of Great Britain. What's actually shown there is just the UK buildings. So there's no coastline layer on there at all. So, and it really shows how UK buildings hug the coastline, and it shows the varying densities across the country. So next slide, please, Tom. So these are the key attributes within UK Buildings. So we've got age and historic data. We've got property dimensions, height, premise area, gross area, etc. We've got structural information about premises, so roof type, wall type, etc. And we've got information about the use and the type. And two recent things that we've had recently is a bungalow flag that will highlight whether a property is a bungalow or not, and whether it's been converted into a flat from some other use type. Next one, please, Tom. We have site information. So we've got a number of buildings that might be on within a property boundary owned by one entity. We've got number of floors, bathrooms, numbers of bedrooms, these room counts. That's in there as well. Interestingly, we've got good identifiers for connecting to other data. So the integration, if you need to integrate this building's data with any other sort of data source, be it Ordnance Survey data source or some data that you've got held against the unique property reference number, for example, you can use these identifiers for that. And we've got some simplified map display characteristics, which take some of the other attributes and make them very easy for you to to display them thematically in things like QGIS or ArcGIS. And so uses for this data, obviously it's used extensively in insurance underwriting and claims. We've got people looking at future energy demand models, looking at the energy needs of local areas going into the future. There are people using this data to assess the suitability of properties for energy saving measures, or retrofit. And as Tom mentioned earlier, we have people using this data to look at flooding events or other catastrophic event risk assessment. And then we also have the telecoms industry using the data to roll out things like 5G, using the height of buildings to assess the transmissibility of 5G masts. So to understand and use our data, it's probably a good idea to have a better understanding of the terminology that we use and how we organize the data in the database, because translating a real world entity like a building into a useful database it's not a simple task. So if you look at this image here, we've got an aerial view of it's actually 4 terraced houses on the left here, and then we've got a map representation of the same 4 properties. Now, if you imagine you own one of those houses, you've got a bit of a front garden, you've got a bit of a back garden, and that red line represents the site ownership boundary. So we call that the site. But we define a building as something with contiguous walls and a roof. So those 4 terraced houses, they actually they are one building because they're all joined together. But if you cut the building with the ownership boundary, you get what we call a premise. Now, our data is stored at the premise level, essentially. So you can imagine that premise is, if it were yours, would be it defines the building that sits within the site, your part, the part that you own. And we also have, for non-residential properties only, should be stressed, is we've got building elements. So if you've got an element of a building that has different characteristics, it might have a flat roof, it might have a different height. If you imagine an office that's appended onto a warehouse, it's a contiguous building, but the office element might have one floor and the warehouse bit might have 3 or 4 floors. We've broken that data out at the element level. And finally, you might want to know a little bit more about addressable entities within the premise. So in this example here, we can see that there are UPRNs, or unique property reference numbers, or addressable units within one in the first 3, but the far left one has got 2 addresses within it. So we can assume that property has been broken up into maybe a maisonette. So there's a downstairs flat and an upstairs flat. So we have a UPRN count against each of the premises as well. So that's how we sort of organize the data in the database. As I said, the main unit that we use is the data is held at the premise level. Next slide, please, Tom.
Okay, so how do we build up and capture this database? Well, probably if you started this now, you wouldn't do what we did, but this is what we did. Because we have an aerial photography background, we've worked with land use and buildings for many, many years. We developed a methodology and a classification of buildings, and we basically classified urban areas in Britain by use, building age and use manually. So we trained people to look at aerial photography and other sources sometimes, and define areas where the buildings have the same characteristics. So if you look at the screen, you might say this area I'm highlighting here, all the buildings in there are 1960s semi-detached, or all this area here are small Victorian terraces, or whatever the characteristics were. So people drew these polygons that basically said everything in this area have these characteristics, all the buildings in this area has these characteristics. And in suburban areas like this, you could clearly do quite big areas reasonably quickly because the buildings are all the same. Obviously in town centres and in commercial areas, it can be much harder and was very time consuming. But we did that work over a number of years, and we completed urban areas at the end of 2019. So we had, at that stage, had an urban database. And we've developed that since and made a complete national data set by incorporating data from other sources. So for example, land registry, energy performance certificates. So if you buy or sell a house or rent a house out, and not only houses but commercial property as well, these days you need an energy performance certificate, and that data is publicly available. So we make use of that and extract some information from that, and actually even include it in UK buildings now. And we looked at planning applications, historic mapping, and a whole range of other sources to get national coverage of really key attributes like age and basement presence and things like that. So interestingly, for age particularly, as I say, we'd observed urban areas, which is perhaps 80% of the buildings in Britain. We got another 10% or so from these other sources, and we had to get national coverage, we had to model and use analytics to fill the gaps, but we only had about 10% to model. So we have a very complete data set from reliable sources, so either documented sources like land registry or our observation. So this is an incredibly rich, powerful data set. So if you're looking for property data, you may well see that Ordnance Survey just released a new NGD, National Geographic Database product, that includes buildings within it, and we were very pleased to be part of that solution, really. So if you look at OS NGD, it includes some Verisk attributes, so the basement, age and wall type attributes within the new OS product come from Verisk. And if you actually look at that data, there's the source of the data, and it says Verisk. So this OS NGD, which you can see on the screen there, it looks a bit like UK buildings. It's a buildings database, and it really does have, it is much more spatially accurate than UK buildings. Most of the buildings that OS in the OS products surveyed. So if you wanted to measure the precise distance between buildings and walls and things like that, or the road, NGD is a fantastic product. But UK buildings does have some significant advantages. There's quite a lot of attributes in UK buildings that aren't in NGD. So things like room count. So if you're looking at deprivation or something and want to know that the number of rooms in buildings and looking for overcrowding, things like that, you can find that information in UK buildings. And as I mentioned, some of the energy performance information is now in UK buildings as well. And when Jeremy was describing the different the buildings, the premises and elements, to describe buildings accurately, you do need to kind of have several kind of entities that you recognize, and OS have the same. They have buildings and building parts, and it's interesting. If you look at what OS have done, in some ways, it's very similar to what we've been doing for many years. But they have the challenge that some attributes are kind of related to an element or a building part, as they call it, and some to the building. We took the decision a couple of years ago to put everything on the premise. So all of our attributes are on one entity, whereas you might find with OS data that you have to fiddle around between entities to get the information you need. So UK Buildings is designed to be easy to use.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So fundamentally, how can we help you? What sort of projects are you working on at the moment that you can see either UK land, UK buildings, or even UK map to see how that might fit into what you're doing? Hopefully we fired your imagination a little bit, but some areas that you might be looking at. You might be looking at geospatial comparisons between different areas, like comparing Kent and Surrey for the amount of industrial land that they have. You might be looking at access to green space. You might be looking at retrofit measures for property, whether homes are suitable for external wall insulation or heat pumps, for example. You might be looking at flooding, looking at the impact of floods. Our data has whether a property has got a basement or not. And again, that's a relevant piece of information when you're assessing how much the impact of flood's going to have. You might be doing some work towards net zero, that you need to take into account climate change impacts and want to see how they affect the built environment. And another example, you might be looking at health inequality. You might be pulling in other data sets, such as deprivation indices, and you need to combine them with UK buildings or UK land data to see how, do some cartographic modeling exercises to see how these things stack up against each other. Next slide, please. So finally, why use our data? So as Tom has pointed out, it's analysis ready. It's very easy to use the UK buildings data in particular. We've got great integration with other data. We've got things, TOID and UPRN identifiers that will help you join it to other data sets. We've simplified it. We've flattened the data onto the premise level so that it's very simple to use. And we've got all sorts of there are attributes in there that make mapping that data very easy as well. We've always had GIS in mind when we were creating this. The data is national scale, it's complete, it's consistent. You've got the small scale land use data and you've got these property characteristics, extensive property characteristics. And why not use the data that is out there in industry and in the market that is addressing these key challenges that people are having, challenges like net zero, like retrofit, flooding impact, extreme event impacts, risk, all those challenges that are out there. This is the data that people are using to address those challenges, and it's a good idea to use the same data that industry are using, and use the same data with the same techniques and skills that industry and research organisations in particular as well are using to solve some of these challenges. And if you want to find out more, you can obviously this is the link to the Verisk data on the Digimap platform. We've got so you can find out more there. Denise is going to make these slides available as a PDF as well, so you can refer to them, particularly the attribute list. You'll be able to see which, if any of those attributes are the things that you'll be interested in using in your projects. And then we are going to hand over to, I think, Denise, who's going to give us a little demo of the Verisk data on the Digimap platform.
Yes, and one thing we should say actually before, Jeremy, we haven't mentioned yet, is so the UK buildings data we've been describing is the full data set, which has been sent to Adina but isn't yet published in Digimap. What you'll be shown is the a kind of cut down version that until now has been available on Digimap. So what Denise will show you is just a a few of the attributes that are available, but the rest of them are coming shortly.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Tom. Yes, I'm just going to show you a little the platform, the Digimap platform, so that you can see how Verisk sits on this platform. And yes, the data we have is still not up to date. We've got some new data from Verisk this month, and we are still processing it, and the data will be available for you as soon as it's processed, very shortly. Actually, we are going quite quick with that. So when you open your Digimap platform, that's what you will see. You see all the collections here. So the Ordnance Survey and any other collection that you would have access to that is in your package. And if I click on Verisk, you will see that there are two. If you click on the web services, you can copy this link that is here, and that will allow you to add the links to other collections and to combine data. And like, for example, you can add the building structure to the aerial collection, for example. If you go again here and click on Verisk Digimap, that's how the map appears to you initially. And you can go to the base maps and you can choose different data collection here for you. So I am here on UK land, and as I zoom in, I will see different base maps appearing for me, like the UK buildings, for example, and the UK by age and use. So let me go to a place that everyone can recognize, like London, for example, Greater London. So here I'm using the UK buildings age. So I can use the UK land. And if I don't know what all these colors are, if I'm getting confused about it, so like the use, for example, I see all those colors, you can just go here to the map content. And when you click on the map content, you will see a detailed color set that you can identify, like where in what the buildings are used for. So emergency services, for example, I know that this is probably a hospital. And I can see also the aerial view. So as I move my map, as I zoom in and out, I will have a more or less selection of the base maps.
If you click the UK map there, you'll see very detailed. That'd be quite
cool. Yeah. So the UK map, London. Yes, this one is the. Yeah, I'll have all the details here as well. Yeah. So yeah, it depends on what you are investigating or researching, and you have a good selection here. And it, as I said, as you zoom in and out, you have a different set of properties that you can look at. If I am in the UK land, for example, and I want to save a map, I can save my map, and it will be stored here, so I can come back to my map whenever I want. I can make annotations on my map and then save it. So if I click here on the drawing tools, I can add markers, I can draw polygons, create labels, do measurements, and I can save all those drawings, all those attributes that I add to this map, and come back to it later and rescue it and work on it. I can even combine two different maps. Like if I make a notation on this map now, and then I open one of my saved maps, it will ask me if I want to just ignore the previous one and open a new one, or if I want to combine them. So I have that choice as well. I can add layers to my map, like the tree canopy, and I will see that they will appear. Maybe I need to zoom in a little more. Yes. And you can see that the tree canopies appear. And I can also add the UK map upper floors. So to my map, so you can choose what, and that will appear on the buildings, not on the field, of course. And so you can add layers to your map, and the layers, again, they will be available according to what you are looking at. I've shown the drawing tools. You can make measurements, measure distance, You can freeze the information on the map so you can come back later on, or you can print the coordinates that you want. The last one I want to show you is the download data. So you can actually download at the national level. You can download the data with the UK buildings and UK land. If you click on those grids here, you will see what is available to be downloaded. In this case, it is basically quite a lot. It's in some other collections, like the historic collections, depending on what type of data you are choosing, you will see bigger gaps. But I think Verisk does really cover the whole UK. So basically you can download data from a very large area here. And when you click on this arrow here, you will see also what your data allowance is, how much you can print out and download, and what data format you can download your data on. And also you see the current version. So this is still from April 2024, and in a few days when we add the new data, this might change as well. So to download my data, I will just tick my box, and then I will select the area that I want to download. So you can either draw it or just have a square, or you can have use a buffer tool to select an area. So you click and select the area you want downloaded, and then you can add to basket. Choose the format you want to download. You already saw which formats are allowed, so you can choose one of them and then request download, and you have your data downloaded for you. So this is red, so I actually selected more than I could download in one go. So it will tell you if you downloaded too much or not. And you can always download a series of rectangles, a series of data, and put them together afterwards. So you can also use coordinates and tile names to download your data. That is what I wanted to show you mainly, is the way you see the Verisk Digimap data in your map, and what you can do with that.